here they are for the first time. The A-10 versus the ACC. Veteran officiating crew, Katie Lukanich, Sarah Williams, Jules Gallion, and Michaela Timpson steps in towards midcourt. And the opening tap against Ilani Kasia, controlled by the Patriots. And we are underway finally in Baton Rouge. Suarez picked up her dribble. Leading scorer, Zaza Walton, with a touch in the paint. And Suarez lost the handle, was poked away by Gordon. So we take a look at our starting lineups, brought to you by Capital One. Up first for the Seminoles as Timpson goes in. Off the hill, Latson the leading scorer in America. Timpson, enormous rebounding numbers this year, and the Noles are on the board first.
A real concern for George Mason. Can they hang in this game on the glass, Roy?
And Timpson with the early bucket. Suarez, Walton, the leaders for head coach Vanessa Blair-Lewis and the Patriots. 1 minute in, the Noles with an early advantage in search of their first NCAA tournament win since 2019, and the bank is open for Paula Suarez.
Well, it's a George Mason team that makes about 7 threes a game at 36%, not heavy with the three ball. Well, they have found their way, the team in green being a very good half-court defensive squad.
Gordon, the mid-range, and the jump stop in traffic.
Well, they got scores, don't they? Latson, Timpson, Gordon, Bowles, multiple kids that can go for 25 or 30 in a ball game.
These two teams were the last two to actually jump in the dance this year. First round action underway yesterday. The big upset earlier today, South Dakota State over Oklahoma State. Walton another touch off the heel. Who wants it? Walton does, and she'll get her own miss back. And Walton off the mark, an 0 for 3 start for the leading scorer for the Patriots at over 15 per game. And here's Latson. Ripped away, and a late whistle. The jump ball, it'll stay on this end. Brooke Wyckoff, year number 3, a former Florida State standout in the late 90s, early 2000s. First team All-ACC back in the day, and she's got her team poised and ready to win an NCAA tournament game.
Yeah, her number 21 jersey hangs in the rafters back at Florida State. One of the all-time greats to lace it up for the Seminoles.
Latson a first basket, and it's 6-3. Suarez goes baseline. Walton off the hesitation. And Kasia, the offensive glass. Eric, thank you very much. Big win for Mississippi State out west here in Baton Rouge. Florida State off to a solid start, a 6-3 advantage. The 6th seed over the 11th seed. George Mason to start with Jimmy Dykes, Roy Philpott, and the dance well underway as our second day of first round coverage continues on the ESPN networks.
And while you're watching Florida State, they come in averaging 87 points a game, the highest scoring team in women's college basketball. George Mason in the green. They have only allowed 66 points one time since late January. They have built their resume on the defensive end.
Well, they are fundamentally sound under Vanessa Blair-Lewis. Inside, a blocking foul called right under the rim. And Latson stays aggressive. 2 free throws coming as Habib picks up her first. So the winner of this game tonight will battle the winner of our late game later tonight. And we do mean it's late at 10:15 Eastern. 3-seed LSU and San Diego State, the Mountain West Conference champions, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's an LSU team on their home floor as a 3-seed, their 4th year in a row actually to be a 3-seed. Remember, they won it 2 years ago coming out of that slot, and Kim Mulkey's team is healthy and ready to roll.
Yeah, Flau'jae Johnson, we expect to see her back in the mix after missing the last 3 games. The SEC tournament, the end of the regular season. Anissa Morrow also figures to be a go. They practice all week, so certainly a good sign for basketball fans to get those 2 stars back in the mix.
Boy, Florida State, they got beat by Alabama last year in this NCAA tournament, and their defense was the problem. And they have changed what they do on this end. Heavy ball pressure. They deny one pass away. And Brooke Wyckoff sat down and evaluated her squad last year after getting knocked out and said, we've got to get better on the defensive end. They create a lot of turnovers. They want their defensive pace to match their offensive pace.
Turnage the block and then the foul. Nicely done. Get the rejection initially. She picks up her first personal. And stepping out of bounds, I believe, is George Mason. Second turnover. Goes back to Florida State.
And that's what Florida State wants to do. They want to force more turnovers and force you into some bad, quick shots. They're about 35 points better on this end of the floor defensively, Florida State is, than last year.
Knowles in the midst of a 6-0 run. Here's a turnover. And ahead to Zaza Walton, the leading scorer for the Patriots. She comes up short. And the rebound is going to be grabbed by Turnage. Snoop Turnage, a spark off the bench for head coach Brooke Wyckoff so far. Here's Latson, leading scorer in America. Absorbs the contact. She'll shoot 2. And Jim, this is what she does. She can make a living, literally, at the free throw line.
Yeah, leads the nation in scoring and has done it since mid-November. But she is a downhill driving force. Gets to the free throw line a ton. But also shoots that three-point shot well enough you have to honest guard her. And her goal this year was to be the Conference Player of the Year. Now, she didn't get it. Hannah Hidalgo from Notre Dame received the majority of the votes there. But this kid, I think, is really underrated, undervalued on the national level. I mean, she's right there with the best of the best.
We talked to her yesterday, and one of the questions we posed to Tanaya, how come more people aren't talking about what you've accomplished in your career? Over 2,000 points, leading scorer in America this season. The numbers have been enormous, and she said, well, it hasn't happened yet in this tournament. She's only played in one NCAA tournament game in her career. Now in year 3, she was injured as a freshman. Just one game last year, you mentioned, against Alabama. She is on the biggest stage now. Here's a turnover. And off to the races, it's Bonner.
So you can see early that Florida State pressure already taking its toll. They force you to make plays instead of run plays. And if you can't go by and win your one-on-one battle against Florida State, it could be a really long night.
It's a 9-0 run for the Seminoles.
Tough shot.
Here's Latson. Turnage will track it down in a fresh 20.
Interesting, both teams, they want to get a shot off in that first 8 or 10 seconds. Hyper aggressive on the offensive end.
And a foul.
They had won 3 games total the year prior to her taking the job. Now she's won 10, 16, 23, now 27. And you win 27 games, well, you're doing something really well. And what they've done well is they've beaten people with a stout defense.
They also protect the basketball. They don't turn it over. Top 15 in America in that category. And on cue, of course, there's a turnover by the Patriots. Florida State in the midst of a 9-0 run. Turnage with a touch on the right side of the lane. The step back is smooth.
Yeah, another shot attempt, though, by Florida State in the first 10 seconds of the shot clock. They are a drive it and lay it in mentality team on the offensive end.
Patriots' only field goal thus far, a banked-in 3 by Suarez. Off the mark with a layup attempt here. And the rebound by Gordon. Corner 3 on the way, and it goes down. And we're going to talk a lot about Carla Villegas and what she brings to the table. Well, the shot's a bit unorthodox, but man, she has been automatic this year at over 44%.
Yeah, made 62 made threes. There's no lift on that jump shot. Kind of snaps it off robotically, but bad news early for George Mason. They can't get any good looks on their offensive end, and Florida State very aggressive. They drive, they play with a lot of freedom, and they get that ball going downhill and make that defense collapse. And there's that snap off by Villegas in the corner. Kind of an unusual shot. It caught our eye yesterday and said, watch this kid shoot it, but man, it goes in at a really high rate.
And it was the FSU staff that talked about the robotic nature of the release, and it really has worked out quite well. Meanwhile, George Mason, first ever NCAA tournament appearance, first ever conference tournament championship, and perhaps a little nerves early. Walton off the mark. Turnage, check that. Timpson last touched it out of bounds.
Yeah, Walton has to produce in this game. She comes in the leading scorer for George Mason, 15 points a ball game, talking about number 2 in green. And she can get her own, but so far she has struggled to get good looks against a very athletic Florida State team.
Coop Mitchell checks in for the first time for the Patriots. And here's Suarez. That's a three. Patriots get it back in a foul. Timpson with contact in traffic. It's her first. Jimmy, what is it like in terms of nerves for a team that's never been on this stage? Here you are with a chance to survive in advance, and who knows what would await you in the second round, but you get the sense Mason's trying to settle in a little bit.
Yeah, you just never know as a coach. You know, you got to trust your gut in that locker room. I thought she was great with her kids, talking to them before the ball game, giving them confidence. But here they are in a historical day for George Mason women's basketball.
Lats it off the mark, and the rebound controlled by Habib.
Now they want to run. They guard their tails off, but they get that ball. They want to get downhill quick as well. Walton, after the field goal, turns it over on the next possession.
Timpson initiating the break, and it's out of bounds. It'll stay on this end. Brooke Wyckoff, year 3, first team All-ACC performer as a player in Tallahassee in the late 90s, early 2000s. Quite a story to tell, and what a season FSU has enjoyed with their big 3 producing at a record pace with Timpson, Gordon, and Tania Latson.
Yeah, heck of a coach, great lady, cancer survivor. I had them last year at the first and second round in Austin, Texas, and just really fell in love with how she handles her kids, the confidence that she has, and has built a real threat in this women's championship this year to make a deep run.
After the bucket by Timpson, the block out of bounds. And Michaela Timpson active on both ends of the floor to start.
Well, you combine her steals and blocks. They call them stocks. She comes into this ball game with 154 on the year. Also gets 1 rebound every 3 minutes. The only player this year that's had 3 8-block performances in the country.
It's a lot of rejections.
That's a lot of rejections.
Off the bounce. Kennedy Harris, and a chance for 3. Well, perhaps a spark for George Mason. And a chance for 3 the hard way on the long mid-ranger.
Now, Kennedy Harris, only 5'7", but you're going to have to make some guarded shots in this game if you're George Mason against that length of Florida State. This young lady was a A-10 second-team all-conference player. Suffered an injury in late January that cost her better part of the next 6 games, but second leading scorer, and she's got to get buckets if George Mason's going to hang in this game.
And battled that lower leg injury, now healthy, and a great matchup between her and Amaria Gordon. Latson off the crossover, and now it's Gordon. And a 3-second call gives it back to George Mason, the second turnover for Florida State.
Yeah, Latson never got out of that lane and cleared it out. George Mason off to a rough start early, but they seem to have settled down a little bit, Roy. To go back to your question, you just don't know how kids are going to react their first time on a big stage like this.
Yeah, these ladies with 27 victories this year. Dominant win against St. Joseph's in the A-10 championship. Really not tested in that tournament run. Harris off the mark this time, and Avery Treadwell a rebound.
I just don't think you have to settle for tough shots early against Florida State. Move that ball, get it to the second or the third side if you're the team in green.
Latson already with 5. Bottled up by Harris, and now Treadwell. Skip pass, and it's intercepted by Habib.
Good job of loading to the ball, right, by George Mason defensively. They formed that eye and got bodies around that ball.
Steal by Taviana Habib. Outside, a wide open 3. It's Volker. It was Volker off the mark. Here's Latson ahead of the pack. And Tania Latson with 7.
Just a breakdown by George Mason. No one, the point guard or the 2 guard, neither one rotated back when the shot was taken from the corner. Those missed shots from the corner, Roy, ignite transition game more than any other missed shot in college basketball.
First ever meeting between these 2 schools comes on the biggest stage. Harris, the elbow J.
Small in stature, but plays with a big heart, man. Just hard to knock her off of her path or a small guard.
Gordon gets it to Treadwell, the lead at 10. Outside to Williams. Baseline, it's Bonner. Tread well with the mid-range, just inside the stripe.
Great job. Not good, great job to drive that basketball. See those green jerseys come attracted to it, play off at 2 feet.
Noles have made their last 3, shooting a blistering 64% from the floor.
Florida State not afraid to switch 1 through 5. That's how much they trust their athletes on the defensive end.
Bonner on the perimeter against Harris. Volker for 3. Would have been big. And the lead at 12, 10 minutes in here in Baton Rouge.
And Florida State comes in averaging 87 points a game, right there with Murray State and Tennessee, the best scoring teams in the country. And they do it with multiple ways, man. They got 4 or 5 young ladies that can go for 20 on any night. They are always a threat to run out. Very, very aggressive style of play on both ends of the floor this year for Brooke Wyckoff's team.
In their first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament. And Nalani Kasia with her daughter Zayla, after 3 years playing volleyball at Charlotte, transferred in to Fairfax, Virginia there, George Mason. And it was great to see that celebration of the A-10 championship. And in the house tonight, watching mom, Nalani Kasia, the graduate student out of Washington, D.C. And they have basically made this one big family for the Patriots this year. She's been at a lot of the practices, on the road trips, and just a great story to have that kind of support.
What a beautiful baby, right? Zayla Kasia, first of all, an all-star name. And I just love that story overall. Nalani played volleyball, like you said, at UNC Charlotte for 3 years. Redshirted last year due to the pregnancy, but then picked up a basketball again because of the natural love that she has for that sport. You talk about a young lady that's had to juggle a lot and have a lot of family built around her, but you know, what a great time for a mom to be on the floor with a baby watching in the stands, right?
No doubt about it. Alani's mother was a 2-sport athlete at Duke University. As Walton connects on 2 free throws, that'll trim the deficit down to 10. Jimmy Dykes, Roy Philp out here in Baton Rouge. Winner of this game, it's the winner of LSU San Diego State tonight. And Latson is fouled on the left side of the lane. 2 free throws coming for numeral 00.
Boy, early you can see why Tania Latson leads the country in scoring. She brings that ball down with pace, and she doesn't see a stop sign or a yield sign. She sees a green light in terms of getting downhill. Very shifty with the ball, strong lower body, gets the foul line a lot, has great control around of her body around the rim as well.
Well, her story well documented. Moved around America, including an extended trip in Hawaii with her family, and her dad served in the Army. And learned how to develop her skill set playing against grown-ups on the hardwood. And I asked her, I said, of all the places you've lived, where's your favorite place? She goes, of course it's Hawaii. I would go outside. There's rainbows and mountains in the background, shooting jumpers. Growing up, it was quite a scene on the islands as Williams gets sent backwards.
Wait, you had to ask her favorite place growing up, knowing that she lived in Hawaii?
Sometimes you never know. Like, maybe you like living in a big city.
But sometimes you do.
Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah, her dad made her play against guys that they're in the Army there on the island, and grew up playing against grown men. And I believe Florida State stumbled onto her video when she was in the 7th grade and knew then that this kid's got something special about her.
Brooke Wyckoff, one of the instrumental coaches in her recruitment off the pump fake. And that's going to put Kasia at the stripe. And well executed right near the rim. And Alani Kasia set to shoot 2.
Roy, remember that George Mason, they've only allowed over 66 points once since late January. That's how they've gotten into this tournament. And when Vanessa Blair-Lewis took that program over, they were at rock bottom. They were 0-14 in the A-10 prior to the year that she got the job, and since then has built it on the defensive end. 10 wins, 16, 23, 27, but now has loosened up the offense a little bit and comes from a great coaching tree, right? Her dad, Robert Blair, who she played high school basketball for, kind of encouraged her to get into coaching, and we know that he's watching right now, battling dementia, and just the great adoration and love that she has for her dad was obvious to us.
Coaching certainly in her DNA, and Latson scoring in her DNA now in double figures with 10.
Boy, she can get downhill. I mean, doesn't have a burst, like she's not a jet, but she has great control and shifts gears and a very strong body through contact.
Suarez, the step back, silky smooth. Paula Suarez with her second bucket. First was a three that was banked in.
Well, Walton, Harris, and Suarez are going to have 15, 16-point games and hit their average to hang in it, if not more. But again, at Florida State, downhill all game long so far.
Latson hit the deck, connect. She's got a dozen. And we got a lot of basketball left to be played. The lead back to 12. Neku Mitchell, layup line.
And never take that foot fake and defensively get out towards the timeline. Breakdown for Florida State on that end.
And Jimmy, it feels like George Mason, you mentioned it near the end of the first quarter, starting to settle in a little bit more, at least offensively. Latson on a heater to start with 14.
Man, she can get her own, can she not? And she does not need much space to get it off. Very explosive. Just 5'8", but can make shots against longer defenders.
Walton off the mark, just inside the arc. Gordon a rebound. Here come the Noles. In transition, the dump off to Timpson. And a block by Kasia. She'll pick up the infraction. And they'll put that on Walton. It's her second.
Boy, Florida State has 4 young ladies with a 30-point game this year. Latson, Timpson, Gordon, and Bowles. And they get out and run, and there's no hesitation. They're not working that shot clock down. That's what Latson can do at 5'8". I mean, that's good defense with just better offense. She can do it all. You go back and watch her films. Off the bounce, the crossovers, the sidestep threes. Probably create space for her shot as well as any guard in this tournament.
3-level score. I've never been to Hawaii, by the way. That's probably the reason I asked. I've never been there.
I know some people that can get you an assignment there.
Put in the phone call, Jimmy.
I'll try.
12-point advantage, baseline. Off the fake, and Walton with 2 fouls remains on the floor. It goes over the top of the backboard in a turnover.
Making life tough on the leading scorer so far, Florida State. Walton's seen multiple white jerseys anytime she has that basketball.
Florida State lost to North Carolina in the ACC tournament. Gordon from the elbow.
Another first-team All-ACC player. Small, only 5'4", but plays off the ball as much as on the ball.
A 2-time Florida Gatorade Player of the Year. What a find and what a player she has turned out to be. Senior from Sarasota, Braden River High School, Amaria Gordon. She's been electric. Here's Suarez. And Villegas tries to track it down. And tumbling over the top is Gordon. George Mason gets it back. Harris no good. What a wild sequence for both sides. Gordon hit the deck a couple of times, and the Noles get it back.
Florida State continuing to pressure George Mason, making them make plays off the bounce. Again, taking away your plays, making you make plays is how this defense is designed.
Last NCAA tournament win for Florida State back in 2019. Been one and done since. Here's Bowles, an outstanding three-point shooter. And she shows you why.
Yeah, transfer from A&M. And we asked Brooke Wyckoff about their style of offense. We want to drive to lay it in, and we also want to drive to kick threes, and that was to perfection that time by Bowles. Ready on the catch.
Under 6 to go in our first half. The 11 versus the 6. Off the mark, Gordon with a rebound. How about the strength shown by Amaria Gordon? From the corner, it's Bowles, and Florida State 6 for 6 to start our second quarter. A perfect beginning.
Florida State makes just under 9 threes a game at 34%. So they got that downhill drive with a great balance from the three ball as well. So aggressive at getting green jerseys to react to that basketball, and then the kick out, fill behind threes. Gordon with a fast push finds Bowles again. Nothing but the bottom of the net, maybe a little bit of rim. Hot start for the Seminoles in Baton Rouge.
Kelsey, thank you very much here in Baton Rouge. Jimmy Dykes, Roy Philpott. Florida State 15 of 20 from the floor. 75% to start this game against the upstart George Mason Patriots. First ever appearance in the NCAA tournament. Kasia inside, a tough shot.
We've had some great individual performances already in this women's NCAA tournament. How about Georgia Amore yesterday? 34 points for Kentucky.
They needed every single one of those.
They sure did. Jordan Hobbs from Michigan went for 28 in their win over Iowa State. And Tania Latson, she could go for 40 in this game at the pace that she's on.
She's done it this season against Virginia Tech. Latson, the leading scorer in America. And again, she told us yesterday, the only thing I haven't done is kind of prove it at this level on this stage with just one NCAA game that she's played in. It was last year against Bama, Jimmy, in a game that you called down in Austin. And she appears to be motivated, not that she wouldn't be anyways. Florida State a rare miss, and that was Bonner off the mark from the corner.
Well, Florida State, though, they bring it with speed, and they always have those corners filled. They really put stress on your transition defense.
There's Suarez open for a moment off the front of the rim, and the rebound grabbed by Bowles. Sydney Bowles, one of the top three-point shooters in the ACC this season. Took it inside, and that shot was blocked towards the baseline. Here comes Harris. 37-19. Suarez, that shot's been there for 14, and she buries another one.
Yeah, Florida State just got unengaged on the defensive end that time. There was no switch at all. One of the few lazy possessions of defense for Florida State in this game.
Jimmy, as a coach, how do you approach a deficit like this in segments? You try to get it at halftime. What are you thinking?
Yeah, you have to. You know, I mean, you look up right now, 37-21. Can you get it to 10 by halftime? I know it's an uphill battle, but if you're Vanessa Blair-Lewis, you're just taking this thing out 4-minute segments.
Lead at 16. 37-21, the NCAA. And we mentioned just the one tournament game. We talked to her yesterday about that. And so what did you learn about playing in the NCAA tournament last year? And she said, honestly, it was about rebounding and second chance points and making sure that we're staying connected and checking those boxes. And her defense has improved this year, Jimmy. 2.5 steals per game. That ranks in the top 5 in the ACC in that category. So multiple boxes continue to be checked for Tania Latson. And by the way, she's committed to returning to Tallahassee next year. And don't forget, for the 5th straight year, every NCAA Women's Championship game is on the networks of ESPN. For more information, go to ncaa.com. Your home for all 90 NCAA championships.
Roy, you mentioned Florida State losing last year to Alabama, and I was there. They were not very good defensively. And after that loss last year, Brooke Wyckoff got with her staff, and they actually studied a book by Bob Kloppenberg about the SOS defense. And Bob, a long-time college basketball coach, NBA assistant, but it's a defense that's based upon total disruption, proactive, attack the offense, force things baseline, down those ball screens on the side, and that they have improved defensive efficiency from number 192 last year to number 161 this year. Still not great on this end, but better than they were a year ago.
And the results speak for themselves. Coach Kloppenberg, the head man, Seattle Storm. How about the bounce off the triple? That's one way to do it. Suarez with her second three. And the lead down to 13. A 7-0 run for George Mason. Here's Latson. Patriots get a stop.
George Mason comes in averaging 7-8 3-point makes per game. They've got to hit their average, if not go beyond, in order to pull off this upset.
And as a coach, you can think that, right? We've got to hit 10 threes today, even if you don't tell your team about it.
Yeah, no doubt. And you go ahead and tell your team about it. Like, this is what it's going to take.
Walton off the mark with the left hand.
Making it tough, aren't they, on Walton? Just nothing easy for the leading scorer from George Mason.
She's got 4, but 1 for 9 from the floor. Latson off the glass. Man. What a strength shown there.
She is a bucket waiting to happen. She absolutely owns the middle third of the floor offensively. Very difficult to send help her way, but she keeps that ball in the middle.
Already with 16, and Coach, you mentioned it. She does not force the issue.
No.
The game comes to her.
Yeah.
Suarez, another long two. This time short. Volker fell down trying to grab it, and Villegas rips away the board before the jump ball is called. goes back to the Noles.
For a young lady that takes 20 shots a game, this is only 2 or 3 a game that you would say, I don't know about that one, but she can make hard shots. And great scorers can do that, even against good defense. Those kids that can average 20, 25 a game, they have that ability. And 00 in white certainly fits that description.
Villegas, quick trigger on the 3. Timpson on the offensive glass with a path and a bucket.
That defense is not at all pleasing to Vanessa Blair-Lewis. They are built on a pack line defense, which loads the ball and keeps them in defensive rebounding position. Not happening so far in this game.
So the Noles respond to that 7-0 run by George Mason. Lead back to 17. Here's Harris open for a moment, in and out. Latson jumps up for the rebound. And Tanaya Latson back to work. At the fingertips of Timpson. Walton the other way. Zaza. The floater with a bounce.
A very important last minute right now in this first half for George Mason. They need a stop and a make and give themselves a little bit of confidence and mojo going into that locker room.
Here comes Gordon. Now Snoop Turnage floats it up. Timpson, short. And Harris comes away with it. Chance to go 2 for 1 for the Patriots, perhaps. We'll set up the offense and get organized. Well, the moments of March, we've seen South Dakota State, the Jacks pull off the 7-10 win earlier today as the 10 over Oklahoma State. There's
Very
Suarez,
nice.
the runner. And a late whistle, a chance for 3. Paula Suarez has really been the spark for George Mason on offense already with 12.
Really well done by Suarez. And after this semester's over, she'll go back to Spain and play pro ball, but very crafty. Not quick, not fast, but just smart. And George Mason again with a little bit of floater by Walton. Now, those are the 2 kids that have got to click offensively and continue to knock into this Florida State lead. But a very good last minute of this half if they get a stop here, talking about George Mason.
And Vanessa Blair-Lewis telling us on Suarez yesterday, she's the only player that's been here all 4 years.
Yeah.
And you could tell that there was an attachment there, what she's brought to the table. The shot clock is off. And the lead down to 12. It's been as high as 20. Nearly halfway through this second quarter. So the Patriots trying to chip away. Here's Gordon weaving her way through traffic. And off the mark at the buzzer. Well, the Patriots with a 12-4 run to end the half. And let's get you to the studio. The Degree in the Studio halftime report. Here's Kelsey Riggs. We are set to go. The beginning of our third quarter in Baton Rouge. The winner of this game gets the winner of LSU and San Diego State, champions the Mountain West Conference. Later tonight, that game scheduled to tip off at 10:15 Eastern on ESPN. Patriots ended the half on a 12-2 run to get back in it. They trailed by as many as 20. And that was nearly halfway through our second quarter, and George Mason will maintain possession here.
Roy, you have to own your spot against Florida State. The more I watch, they climb right up into you. They pressure the ball, and they keep you on the sidelines. If you're the team in green right now, you've got to own your space, man, and get aggressive and not let that pressure completely disrupt what you're doing.
That's saying something, too, for a team that basically leads America in points per game in terms of the Power 4. Over 87 per contest, and the rebound controlled by Sydney Bowles. Yeah, defense with that kind of explosiveness on this end of the court. Timpson connects. It's a dangerous combination for whoever advances out of the nightcap later tonight if FSU holds on.
Another shot attempt, though, by Florida State within the first 5 or 6 seconds of the possession. George Mason has to get back and build their defense inside out, build a wall, stop the ball. They have not done it so far in this game at a high level.
That rhymed. That sounded really good. Walton fell down.
Now here's what I'm talking about. You got multiple green jerseys, but no one deletes that drive and stops that ball. If you're George Mason, you got to sprint to that paint and make Florida State, if they shoot a shot in transition from distance, fine, but no more rim attempts. I'm sure Vanessa Blair-Lewis talked about that at halftime.
Build a wall, stop the ball. I'm going to use that. Can I use that? Is that patented?
Yeah, you can use it when you go to Hawaii for the first time.
I feel like that's happening. I'm excited. Suarez.
I love her game. Suarez, you can't speed her up. And those kids that play international ball growing up, that's kind of the skill set that they have. They play to their pace. And 14 in green is really, really good at it.
Most improved player in the A-10, one of 3 team captains for Vanessa Blair-Lewis. Well, she's got a calmness about her. We really enjoyed our conversation with her yesterday. I was fortunate enough to be able to see George Mason in November in their road win at Wake Forest. Awfully impressive then. I told her yesterday, Coach, you knew this was going to be a special season. When I saw you in November, she said, you're right. I did. Suarez, no. And Timpson had to go down to the floor to grab the rebound, but she did. Gordon to Latson. Outside to Williams from downtown. And Gordon, the running rebound. Bulls for 3.
Yep. The ball knows. It's crazy. Those reload threes. If you can't clean up your own defensive glass and you give up offensive rebounds, it seems like that next shot goes in at a much, much higher rate. Really well done by Bowles.
She has not missed a three-point attempt tonight. Perfect 3 for 3 to start. Suarez, the response on the other end.
I mentioned she's going to go to Spain and play professionally after this semester's over. She's going to have a long-term career in that international pro level.
Latson draws the contact, the blocking foul.
Well, Florida State's got multiple kids that can make shots, but they fly into that offensive glass. And that's a reload 3 right there. Reload your offense and find Bowles on the backside bomb. And then the answer for George Mason is Suarez, just very confident, very smooth, not rattled at all by the athleticism from Florida State.
First points of the half for Tanaya Latson. Now with 17, the lead back to 15. Career high at 40. That happened against Virginia Tech earlier this season.
Had a triple-double this year and 4 other double-doubles.
It's a lot of doubles for the 0-0. And Harris fouled on the penetration. Should be 2 free throws for the Patriots.
Where you mentioned this is the rejection to redemption tour this year for George Mason. The reason why we say that, last year in the A-10 quarterfinals, they felt like they had a chance last year to make it to the NCAA tournament. They were playing well, but they were beaten in the last second of the A-10 quarterfinals. The officials actually re-officiated a play, which you cannot do.
That doesn't sound great.
No, you can't do it, and it cost them what they think was the game. So, man, their hearts were broken last year in the A-10 tournament, and they have used that to fuel their fire this year from rejection to redemption. And 27 wins this year for the team in green, a high level team out of the A-10.
Here's Latson. Force one up there, and the rebound controlled by Mitchell. Here come the Patriots. They certainly won the jumpsuit game yesterday, and they added the letter D on the end of Believe with their t-shirts celebrating the A-10 championship, because it's in the rearview mirror, it's in the past. We believe we won, and the lead back down to 12.
Yeah, I love that. We believed big, and they're believing big right now to cut this lead down to 12.
Timpson, no. Latson was tripped up on the spin.
George Mason, they got all the way to number 40 in the net this year. And that's a really good number for a program that's making their first NCAA tournament appearance. They've been there on the men's side several times. 17-4 in the A-10 this year.
It's a 3rd foul on Zaza Walton. So the leading scorer coming into this game for George Mason this season. Now with a breather. Her 3rd personal foul, and it's been the Paula Suarez show thus far with 16 points. And Timpson at the line after Kasia picked up her 2nd. And coverage of the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship continues on CBS, TBS, TNT, and True TV. For more information on tournament game times and networks, go to ncaa.com.
Boy, that's a big third foul on Zaza Walton, and she is a problem in terms of when you play against her. Loves to compete, a bulldog, doesn't take a day off, and the heartbeat, the scoring threat for George Mason now falls into the hands of Suarez, and she answers.
Suarez from deep in the lead down to 10, so the 20-point deficit has been sliced in half here in our third quarter.
Yeah, they have settled into this game. It took them 6 or 7 minutes in that first 20 to get going.
Gordon left open. Off the left side. And Suarez stays in bounds to corral the rebound. And the Patriots with momentum on their side for maybe the first time truly in this game. And here's Suarez, a heat check.
Wow.
And it's good. Yes. The lead down to 7.
Yes, ma'am. With Zaza Walton on the bench, Paula Suarez says, "Coach, I've got you." And she has, by herself, shot George Mason right back into this thing. Such a sweet stroke. Harris with a good job of making Florida State a little bit confused, and Suarez just finds herself wide open, and then the dribble to the left and the stop and the pop. And George Mason Patriots not going away yet. Their first trip to the big dance, and they want to stay a while.
Paige Greenberg on the George Mason bench, wearing number 32, an integral part for Vanessa Blair-Lewis coming off the bench. And wouldn't you know it, Kim Mulkey, the head coach at LSU, in the house talking with Paige's mom. They're actually best friends. Jan Crawford, mother of Paige Greenberg, in the house. CBS News chief legal correspondent. Those two remain extremely tight. And when Kim found out, head coach at LSU, that George Mason was going to be here in Baton Rouge, she couldn't believe it. For their first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament, two close friends getting together and conversing and taking in the action. So not just a scouting report for the Hall of Famer Kim Mulkey, but also a close-knit bond with Jan Crawford and Paige Greenberg. And I'm sure the conversations were quite interesting last night at dinner.
Well, Kim Mulkey says she's literally one of my closest, dearest friends. And obviously well aware of Paige and her game. And we had a great conversation with Coach Mulkey yesterday and shared some insight with us that I didn't know. Number one, she's never had a drink of alcohol, and she's never drank coffee. Those are just two of the things that she shared with us, and we got a bunch more to share in the next game. That's just a teaser. One of the reasons why to watch that next one.
Professional broadcaster Jimmy Dykes, the art of the tease, perfectly illustrated there. Kim Mulkey told us she screamed out loud when she saw George Mason pop up, sitting right in between Anissa Morrow and Flau'jae Johnson. And people were kind of looking around like, wait a second, why are you screaming for George Mason? It's because her best friend, her daughter, plays for the Patriots, and Paige Greenberg, who's battled injuries herself, but a fun story kind of under the surface with the 4 teams here in Baton Rouge.
Right, I love the fight back right now by George Mason. They're getting on the glass. They're not getting punked on the glass at all. All 5 are rotating down and getting involved in the fight. It's an 8-point game, and there's how this bracket's shaping up so far. Michigan State and NC State have advanced to Monday, and we'll see what comes out of the Baton Rouge.
Yeah, Zy James, Wes Moore, and NC State were tested by the Catamounts for a moment earlier today. It's a 1-possession game late in the first half, and then the Wolfpack were able to handle their business. 8-point lead here. George Mason back on the attack. Mitchell inside and rejected by Turnage.
What a recovery, though, by Snoop Turnage. It's the long arm of the law around that rim defensively.
Gordon throws it up and in, a circus shot.
You realize she's only 5'4", but fearless, taking it in around that rim against size.
Jimmy, she already has 6. Meanwhile, Suarez has 22. She's 1 point away from her season high, 2 off of her career high. And she's already doubled her season average, 14 in green and gold with possession. And on cue, the runner comes up short. Who wants it? And a scrum right under the rim. A jump ball gives it back to FSU.
Well, Snoop Turnage is 6'1" and long, and a very good defender on the interior. And right there, just the second player off the floor to race what was going to be an automatic 2. And really good job of Maria Gordon to cover up that ball for a small guard, finish through traffic.
We are back in Baton Rouge. The lead at 10 for number 6 seed Florida State over the 11 seed George Mason. Jimmy Dykes, Roy Philpott, head coach for the Noles, Brooke Wyckoff. And you go back to the fall of 2023 when we found out that she had cancer and had a tumor removed, was back at practice and coaching within a week. And earlier this year, an incredible story. The K-Yow Cancer Fund presented a check for $25,000 to the Tallahassee Memorial Healthcare Foundation in honor of Brooke Wyckoff and her battle with cancer now more than a year and a half ago. And her strength, her determination, and everything associated with what she brings to the table after that very incredible comeback in fall of 2023, Jimmy. Something we're still talking about to this day, and she continues to fight. She's been cancer-free now for over a year, and certainly everybody's rooting for her, but what a courageous story and fight against the dreaded disease.
Yeah, she was a great player. She's a heck of a coach and outstanding in terms of a leader, battling through adversity and just the day-to-day lessons that she showed her kids at Florida State. Didn't miss anything with her team, and talked about the importance of her daughter. And I love my visits with Brooke Wyckoff. It only happens about once a year at the NCAA tournament, but I really cherish the time just being around her and learning from her and seeing the joy that she has in her life.
Oh, the steal by Bonner. And she'll initiate the break the other way, 2-on-3. Yeah, Tania Latson yesterday reflected on that time right after Coach Wyckoff returned. 3 by Gordon from the corner, and that's a big response, a lead back to 15. And she said, we drew off of her strength. She was an inspiration to us last season and still in this postseason run we hope to make. Here's a steal by Latson. Wow. And now it's a 10-0 run by FSU.
Just like that again. This is the leading scoring team in the nation. 87 points a game to start this tournament. Murray State and Tennessee right there with them. But they can go on 8, 9, 10-0 runs about as well as anybody in the women's game. Talking about Florida State.
Latson over 20 points now for the 25th time this season. A block by Timpson, and Kasia will head to the free throw line.
Well, Florida State again, they have turned up the heat defensively this year. They are alert. They want to force turnovers and quick bad shots, and if they get it, man, they rip and run. And Tania Latson, there's no hesitation in her game at all from the defensive end to the offensive end. A lot of depth. That SOS pressure defense, it almost forces Brooke Wyckoff to go 8, 9, 10 deep within a 40-minute game.
Is it SOS like a call for help, or does that stand for something? Do we know that?
I haven't read the book yet, but I'll get back to you maybe by Monday.
We may have some time a little bit tomorrow around some other basketball games that are taking place.
I just know the nuts and bolts of it are pressure, and you see them. They hard pressure the ball. They don't get in gaps. Again, they make you make one-on-one plays. It's similar to Duke back in the day with Coach K, just how hard they pressure that ball and make you make plays.
Latson open for a 3, off the mark. Treadwell on the floor, ripped away by Gordon.
What a little fighter, huh, Gordon?
And now stolen by George Mason. Faith O'Corey. And now Jada Brown on the floor. Corner 3 is good for Kennedy Harris.
There's just a lot of fight back in this team from Green. George Mason out of the A-10. I'm not sure they have enough to come back and win this game, but man, they have kept game pressure on Florida State.
It's a 12-point deficit at halftime, now at 13. Villegas comes up short. Well, it's almost a set shot from about 24 feet.
It is.
Walton back on the floor. Patriots could use number 2 in green and gold to get going, and she does there with 2 free throws on the way.
And George Mason is not heavy on the 3 ball. They only make about 7 a game, but a good job by Suarez to find Harris spotted up. They shoot it with freedom. I love what Vanessa Blair-Lewis did. She built this program off that pack line defense. But then this year, she has loosened up the offense and said, our defense is good enough to win championships. Let's improve our offense. Has loosened them up a little bit. Again, another team, just like Florida State. They want to score in that first 8 or 10 seconds. That bodes well for them, by the way, Roy, when they're down 12. They are not a grinded-out offensive team.
Pace matters, and the Patriots are equipped to try to complete a comeback for their head coach, Vanessa Blair-Lewis.
I love what she told us yesterday. She said, if you ask any of my players, what position do you play? She said, they better say defense. That's how I build my team, that all of them think defense first.
Here's Latson, the spinner, and the foul. Tonight, Latson's going to find a way to put up points. She averages almost 25 per game this year. And Jimmy, the one thing she told us yesterday, loves to collect Lego sets. She's got 13 sets. She's got them in her room. She uses that as a way to try to relax and just get her mind away from the game for a moment. And I found that interesting as a way to relieve stress, to build Lego sets.
If they advance and play Monday night, I'm going to go to Walmart and buy some Legos and see if she can build us something between now and Monday, right?
That'd be fun.
Spare time.
I think so. Probably would play better as a result, just judging off of what she had to tell us. To each his own. It's fascinating how players try to get their minds off the stress and everything that comes, the fatigue, especially in March. A stage like this. Suarez already with 22. Off the mark that time, Bonner. Hauls in the board. The left-handed dribble coast to coast. And Bonner to the free throw line, 79% this season. That's one way to initiate the offense.
They do not waste time, though. Again, look at that 24 on the shot clock. So they rip that rebound and run up that sidelines. And Bonner just comes off the bench, gives them good minutes. All of them. It's not a one-man fast break for Florida State. Multiple kids can rebound and bring it with speed and force.
Seminoles 10 of 11 at the free throw line in this quarter, and the lead back to 14. Well, Vanessa Blair-Lewis is going to look back at the very start of this game, and Florida State's quick start, that kind of has been the difference. They've been able to manage a couple of runs, trailing by 20, to get back in it, and still certainly in it, but that slow start has kind of kept them at arm's length away from the Seminoles.
Yeah, if you're just joining us, this is the first NCAA tournament appearance by George Mason.
It was a 22-10 outburst in the first 10 minutes, the difference. Walton back to Harris from 16.
All George Mason's doing, Roy, is just keeping game pressure on Florida State. And if you're the underdog, you're just trying to hang in this game and be in a fighter's chance with 4 minutes to go.
Steal by Suarez, a big moment here.
They got numbers, it's 5-on-4.
Top of the key, a triple drops for Jada Brown. Jada Brown, 26% from three. Big bucket near the end of the third quarter. That'll slice that lead down to 10.
It could be a big stop right here for George Mason as well. And they're wasting a lot of time, right?
Here's Gordon, bottled up and under. And the shot is out of bounds. The lead at 10 with 10 to go in Baton Rouge.
They just keep picking themselves up off the mat. And from the steal right here, the good hands by Suarez from behind. And the rip and run ability by the George Mason Patriots out of the A-10. They got this thing down to a 10-point game with 10 to go.
A record-breaking season for George Mason and head coach Vanessa Blair-Lewis, and she dedicated this run and their championship in the A-10 to her father, who helped get her into coaching. Robert Blair, currently in hospice care. We know he's watching, and Mr. Blair, we are with you, and we appreciate all that you have brought to the table as a coach and as a human being.
Yeah, her dad's 90 years old, has battled dementia the last 12 or 13 years, but I mean, there's a bond and a love between Vanessa and her dad, Robert, who coached her in high school and then encouraged her to get into coaching at the high school level initially before she went back to her alma mater, Mount St. Mary's. But just the 5 or 6 minutes that she talked about her dad, just you could just sense the bond, the love, the admiration, and all of the coaching that she brings in. A lot of it is learned from her dad. So Robert, I know you're watching right now along with Vanessa's mom, and your daughter right there has made you extremely proud, I know, and she loves you with everything she has. It was very obvious in our conversation.
FaceTime with her dad before the A-10 championship game in which they beat St. Joe's. Back here at Baton Rouge, and a 10-point game. That lead increases to 13 on the 3 from the wing. Sydney Bowles has been awfully impressive and nearly perfect in her start from the floor in this NCAA tournament. Harris, the step back and rejected by Latson. Now 2.5 steals per game also has been outstanding in the block department, and it's tapped out. It'll stay with the Noles.
I think it's interesting that Vanessa Blair Lewis, to finish off that story, her goal was to be a prosecuting attorney and go to law school. But she just kind of kept putting it on hold because her dad wanted her coach, or her former college coach said, hey, just come help me for one more year. And next thing you know, here she is rising through the ranks from Bethune-Cookman and now at George Mason.
And she kept putting off law school each and every year while she was an assistant coach. And then her head coach retired and told her, hey, 3 days from now, you're going to be the new head coach. You're going to be the interim.
Yeah.
And that's how she really stepped full force into the coaching realm as opposed to becoming a lawyer one day. "15-point advantage, and FSU has scored the first 5 of this fourth quarter in a game that is still very much in doubt. The winner will get the winner of LSU and San Diego State, our nightcap here at Pete Maravich Assembly Center. And there goes Gordon, spins it up and down.
Quick, low, strong, and tough is how I would describe her.
7-0 run for FSU to begin the fourth. And every run George Mason has made tonight, Florida State has responded, Jimmy, almost immediately.
Florida State continues to switch really 1 through 5, trusting their athletes.
Walton, no. Tapped out to Latson. Tania Latson, full head of steam. Rejected by Suarez. Latson on the floor. And a timeout call from the FSU bench.
All gas, no brakes is the mentality that Florida State has played with all year long. They lead the nation in scoring. They have the nation's leading scorer to match it as well with Latson. But other kids, again, they've had 4 different players this year go for 30. Man, they are a load.
As the arena begins to fill here at the Pete Maravich Assembly Center in Baton Rouge, the Tigers, the 3 seed, are in the house to get set to battle San Diego State. The Aztecs in the dance for the first time since 2012, led by a former LSU assistant. More on that as we get deeper into the night. That's a 10:15 Eastern tip over on ESPN as soon as we are done with this first matchup. And the lead at 17, Jimmy Dykes, Roy Philpott. Florida State has looked the part as a top seed so far in this NCAA tournament, and Timpson with a chance for 3.
Just a very simple isolation baseline out of bounds play. Throw it to your driver at the elbow and keep that ball in the middle third of the floor. And the length continues to be a problem for George Mason in this game. And really good job by Timpson. You know, she's a double-double, averaging, 17 points and 10 rebounds on the year. I mentioned it earlier, the only player in the nation to have 3 8-block games this season.
Double-double tonight already with 14 and 11. Lead back to 20. This matches FSU's largest advantage. And it has been a scoring barrage to begin the fourth quarter. Alani Kasia against Timpson. Timpson a block. Kasia gets it back. And a third time. Here's Harris. Brown for 3.
Whoops.
And out of bounds back to FSU.
Just looking at Tania Latson's stat line right now, one thing that jumps out, she has been fouled 8 times in this game. Talking about 0 in white, the nation's leading scorer. And she's tucked away in that top corner, but got a lot of stuff about her game. Working off of a screen right here.
Drops the dime inside to Timpson, who comes up limping. And walking gingerly back down the court. Simpson with 16 and 11. Brown another 3. And the lid remains firmly on for George Mason to begin our fourth quarter.
Oh yeah, step that right ankle rolled out.
And Timpson back to the bench along with Sidney Bowles. How about the start of this fourth quarter for Florida State? 12-0 run. Largest lead at 22 and a foul called. Jimmy, you and I were kind of looking at each other right before the start of our fourth quarter. And this had become a game again. Brooke Wyckoff certainly knew that, and Florida State, give the Seminoles credit, they have responded to every George Mason run this evening. Variety of moves and a foul called. Asia was not going to give up on that possession.
Well, it's been a very difficult evening for their leading scorer, Zaza Walton, who is now 2 out of 13 from the floor for George Mason. And with only 8 points, very difficult to pull off an upset when your leading scorer is being held in check. 7 points below our average is a frustrating start to the game and has not worked her way out of it. Had foul trouble in that first half. The athletes of Florida State have made life very difficult on that young lady tonight.
An early thought on our late game this evening, and we will be the final first round game to tip off. LSU the 3 seed, getting Flau'jae Johnson back, and Anissa Morrow, who missed the second half in that semifinal loss against Texas in the SEC tournament. She's healthy, and we know LSU is good enough to win a national championship this year, but here comes San Diego State.
They are, and it speaks to the depth of the women's game right now when you think that LSU's a 3 seed and they legitimately are a Final Four national title contender. And they're healthy right now, and I actually had LSU earlier this year at Florida. And one of the things I remember about my conversation with Kim Mulkey, she said, I have ultra competitive kids. And I know they got some stars, but at the end of the day, I think that's an LSU team that really loves to compete. They're going to be on their home floor, and Kim Mulkey bought the student tickets to fill up this arena tonight. I believe 1,900 was the last count that she said, hey, you're a student at LSU, you've been supporting us all year long, I will buy your ticket. And they have already filled in to the end zone to our right and be one of the better environments in these first and second round games here in Baton Rouge.
And they've had several incredible atmospheres this year. You go back to the non-conference matchup with Stanford in December. This place was absolutely on fire. Suarez inside, and now a new career high at 24. It'll tie her career high, a new season high. But the atmosphere tonight should be absolutely electric, and Gordon continues her hot start in this year's dance.
Just exactly what you have to do against pack line defense. You got to get the ball inside that paint, make that defense respond to it, and find those skip passes for, a couple of backside bombs every half.
Latson off the steal, tried to scoop it over to Gordon ahead of the pack, and it goes back to the Patriots. What does San Diego State have to do tonight to have a chance to be able to pull off an upset on the road?
Oh man, they can't turn it over. They can't have live ball turnovers. And at the end of the day, can San Diego State just hang with LSU, the most dominant offensive rebounding team in the country? That's a big, big concern for the Aztecs as they roll in here.
It feels like Anissa Morrow starts the game with about 8 rebounds.
No doubt.
The way she's able to haul in those boards. Suarez halfway home in our fourth quarter. Florida State in front comfortably. Latson brings it down.
It's an amazing watch. Anissa Morrow, who leads the nation in rebounding, and she's 6'1" on a good day. She's not any taller than that, but her will and her hands, how she studies film, things will break down during that game. She is elite, and I don't like using that word a lot, but she is elite as a rebounder.
How about the elite finish by Gordon again? Another razzle-dazzle finish right at the rim. Gordon with 16 points. Check it now, 18, 5 boards and 3 dimes.
Again, they come in averaging 87 points a game, and they're at 82 right now. I'm probably going to go over their average. But they spread you out, they drive it, and they play fast. They play fast and they play clean. They don't turn the ball over a lot. And a ton of points in the paint tonight for Florida State. 44, right? Points in the paint. That's the most allowed by George Mason all year. So they're doing it to a very good defensive team.
First time George Mason has been in the tournament, a new career high for Paula Suarez. And what a season it has been, with a record-breaking 27 victories. And on the verge of coming to an end for Vanessa Blair-Lewis, but future remains bright in Fairfax, Virginia. And the rest of the A-10, they figured it out rather quickly this year. The run that they went on, timeout called by the Patriots. Yeah, Texas and SEC Player of the Year Madison Booker. Of course, a lot of folks believe the Longhorns could be the ones that cut down the nets in Tampa next month. And Jimmy, you mentioned it earlier. How great is it this year that so many teams are capable of winning the whole enchilada?
Yeah, we've kind of seen that going that direction in the women's game in the last 2 or 3 years. It seems like prior to that, it was down to about 4 teams. When that bracket came out, you knew one of these 4 teams was going to win it. Not this year. This thing goes 8, 9, 10, maybe even deeper than that.
Yeah, you think about South Carolina, you think about LSU, the team we will see later tonight here against San Diego State, Texas, UConn, USC,
UCLA.
There you go. Yeah, Lauren Betts and the Bruins, Juju Watkins and the Trojans. Paige Beckers is back for another run of the Final Four. And how impressive was UConn today against Arkansas State, making their first NCAA tournament appearance. Now the Huskies kept their foot on the gas, and over 100 points. Very impressive, as you would expect in the start for Gino Auriemma one more time.
Well, Arkansas State hit a shot at the buzzer to cut it to 69. I think that's what it was. Man.
Latson to Timpson. Big upset today was South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits over Oklahoma State. Corner 3 for Tanaya Latson. And her first triple gives her 28 points. She said it yesterday, and it's worth repeating. We asked, why are more people talking about Tanaya Latson? She said that's a good question, and really it comes down to performing on this stage in this tournament, just her second career game in the NCAA tournament. And with 3.5 to go, perhaps the last time we've seen numeral 00 in this one.
And she also mentioned that we're not on ESPN a lot. You know, we're on the ACC network. We don't get maybe as much national exposure as some of the other players that are out there, but she's every bit as good offensively as anyone in this tournament.
And you don't want to look too far ahead, but you can only imagine the potential Monday night. If the seeds hold serve and LSU were to find a way to win tonight at home against upstart San Diego State, a Florida State LSU game with 2 of the highest scoring teams in America, with Tanaya Latson, Flau'jae Johnson, Anissa Morrow, Michaela Williams, Michaela Timpson. There's a lot of star power potentially on the floor at one time.
San Diego State saying, wait, hold my Diet Coke for just a second, but that's a severe challenge for the Aztecs to come in here and play LSU on their home floor. A team that's healthy, like you mentioned. And if you're Florida State, the 6th seed, you took care of business this evening. And George Mason, they made you work a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. But you see the offensive firepower that whoever wins that LSU San Diego State team, you're going to have your work cut out for you defending this team in white. Wow.
Bulls 5 for 5 from downtown, 90-57. Folks, this was a 10-point game to begin the 4th quarter.
Bulls with 5 made threes in this game, right? She had 6 earlier this year in their win against North Carolina. One thing I like about Florida State, when you look at their resume, their big wins have all been on the road. At number 13, North Carolina. At number 20, Georgia Tech. At number 3, Notre Dame. Brooks Wyckoff's team has been tested and held up on the road, which they very well could have to do Monday night if LSU advances.
2 of those 3 wins as well, Jimmy, came missing key components from that starting 5 for Brooke Wyckoff. In the game you mentioned with Bowles, she had 32. That road win at Georgia Tech.
They came in again making 9 threes a game as a team. And that's exactly where they are in this ball game. 9 out of 18 from the 3-point line for the game, right on their average.
Finishing extremely strong, Latson and FSU. The Noles have made their last 7 field goals. And outscoring George Mason 27-4 in this fourth quarter, and a perfect springboard into Monday night. Treadwell inside was fouled, and Kamaya McNeil on the floor for the first time picks up the personal, the Syracuse transfer. And that will put Avery Treadwell at the stripe. And that crowd filing in here for LSU, the student section almost at full capacity. We encourage you to check back in at 10:15 Eastern over on ESPN. The 3-seed Tigers, the 14-seed Aztecs. And Kim Mulkey enjoying this one before she gets set to take the court with her LSU Tigers in short order.
George Mason is going to be one and done in this tournament, but again, congratulations on them to get here, the A-10 champs. And that's a good league, that Atlantic 10. There's no football in this league, so on the men's and women's side, basketball matters in that league. And I didn't know a lot about George Mason, the school, so
oh boy,
my time today. George Mason was a founding father and delegate to the U.S. Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787. He was one of 3 delegates who refused to sign the Constitution.
This is George Mason, the person.
Yes.
Not the school.
Yeah, the person.
Got you.
Yeah.
That's good research on your part. Did you have any help with that?
None. Well, my phone, but other than that, none. I didn't know there's 3 people that refused to sign the Constitution. I do now. He's one of them.
We were thinking for a moment maybe George Mason was a president at some point in time.
I thought so.
That's not the case. Our producer Scott Matthews quickly rejected that idea.
Well, good offense beat good defense today. George Mason came in. I think I mentioned it a couple of times that they've only allowed 66 points once since late January, and Florida State's going to hang 94-95 on them. And Brooke Wyckoff's team is clicking on all cylinders to start their run, what they think is going to be a deep run in this NCAA tournament.
Ayani Dos Santos on the floor, number 4. And the garnet and white, a couple of free throws. Most points the Patriots have given up all season. Florida State was a 64% start in that first quarter. And then it really accelerated as FSU connected on 15 of its first 20 shots overall. Okori the layup, her first points. That makes it 94-59. But Jimmy, you shoot at that kind of clip, at that kind of percentage, the basketball game and the sport that we all know and love becomes a beautiful thing.
Well, I had this team a year ago in Austin, Texas, Florida State, who lost their first-round game to Alabama. Offensively, they are just as good as they were. They are better defensively because of the change that they've made. High-pressure defense for 40 minutes.
Off the steal, one more chance for George Mason in the heave. Off the top of the backboard, 94-59. And for Florida State, its first NCAA tournament victory since 2019. And the Seminoles survive and advance to Monday. Brooke Wyckoff and FSU awaiting the winner of LSU and San Diego State. That game set to tip off at 10:15 Eastern here in Baton Rouge at the Pete Maravich Assembly Center over on ESPN. Big win for FSU, a big win for the ACC. And our final score of 94-59 for Jimmy Dykes. I'm Roy Philpott. Let's get you back to the studio and Kelsey Riggs.